45 million Americans believe they are German. 25 million believe they are Irish. And somewhere between those two numbers sits a third group that does not show up on any census. The people of Appalachia. When the geneticist Dr. Brian Donnelly and his team at the University of Tennessee compared Appalachian DNA samples against the broader American genetic database in 2018, they expected to find a quiet, recessive version of the standard British colonial signature. What they found instead was a population that looked nothing like the textbook story. Their DNA tells a different story. We were not looking at distant cousins, we were looking at ghosts. Ghosts of a border war fought 400 years ago in a place most Americans cannot find on a map. This is what your DNA test does not tell you, and this is what the historians left out. The standard American DNA profile, the one most of you have seen come back from 23, and me or ancestry DNA breaks down into broad strokes. British and Irish, Northwestern European, a sliver of Scandinavian, a little German, maybe some Iberian noise. That profile is the genetic average of the 13 colonies blended through 4 centuries of internal American migration. Appalachian DNA does not fit that average. Donnelly's team sequenced over 1,200 individuals from the central Appalachian counties of eastern Kentucky, southern West Virginia, southwestern Virginia, and East Tennessee. The samples were drawn from families with at least 4 generations of documented residence in the same county. What the team found was a population that had been genetically isolated for roughly 250 years. 250 years of marrying within the same cluster of valleys. 250 years of the same surnames appearing on the same census rolls. 250 years of a closed gene pool, drifting away from the coastal American baseline. In genetic terms, this is called endogamy, and it means the Appalachian signal is sharper, older, and more regionally specific than any other Anglo-American population in the country. When the team compared the dominant Appalachian markers against modern European reference samples, the closest matches were not in Dublin. They were not in London. They were not in Belfast. They were in 3 very specific places: the Scottish borders, the northern English counties of Cumberland and Northumberland, and a narrow strip of Ulster on the northern coast of Ireland. Close, related, but distinct. To understand what the Appalachian signal actually is, you have to understand a war that ran for 300 years along a line most modern people have never heard of. The Anglo-Scottish border. From roughly the year 1300 to the year 1600, the border country between England and Scotland was the most violent region in Western Europe. Not the most violent in war, the most violent in peacetime. Cattle raiding, blood feuds, organized clan warfare, kidnapping for ransom. The people who lived there were called the border reavers, and the English crown considered them a separate problem from both the Scots and the English. The historian George MacDonald Fraser documented the reaver surnames in his 1971 study, and those surnames read like a roll call of Appalachia today. Armstrong, Graham, Elliott, Bell, Hall, Johnston, Kerr, Maxwell, Nixon, Robson, Scott, Hume, Crozier, Trotter, Beatty, Burns. Those are not generic British names. Those are border names, and they cluster in eastern Kentucky and southern West Virginia at rates 4 to 7 times higher than they appear in the general American population. In 1610, King James I, who was himself a Lowland Scot, ran out of patience. He resettled the most violent border reaver families across the Irish Sea into the Ulster plantation, not to populate Ireland, to get rid of them. The English crown was outsourcing its own border problem. The geneticist Dr. Edmund Gilbert, working out of the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, mapped the genetic structure of the Ulster Scots population in 2017. His finding was specific. The Ulster plantation population is not Irish. It is not Scottish in the Highland sense. It is a transplanted Lowland Scots and border English population, genetically continuous with the people who lived between Carlisle and Edinburgh before 1610. When those reaver families were pushed out of Ulster a century later by religious persecution, economic collapse, and a series of failed harvests, they left through the port of Belfast and they landed at the port of Philadelphia. Between 1717 and 1775, roughly 250,000 Ulster Scots arrived in the American colonies. The historian James Webb, in his 2004 book, Born Fighting, called them the most arriving and least recorded ethnic group in American history. 250,000 arrived in a few decades. They did not stop in Pennsylvania. The Quaker establishment did not want them. They were sent down the Great Wagon Road through the Shenandoah Valley into western Virginia and the Carolina backcountry, and then up into the hollows of southern Appalachia. That migration is the single largest source of the modern Appalachian genome. And that migration is why your DNA test, if you come from that line, comes back labeled as British or Irish, without distinguishing between the two. The reference databases at 23 and Me and Ancestry DNA do not yet have a separate category for Lowland Scots border English. So the signal gets averaged into the British and Irish bucket, and the specificity is lost. But the specificity is real, and it is the dominant signal in Appalachia. Direct address for a moment to anyone watching who has run a Y chromosome test through Family Tree DNA or 23andMe. If your paternal haplogroup came back as R1BU106, your direct male line traces to the Germanic North Sea coast. That is the dominant signal in the modern Netherlands, northwestern Germany, and the eastern half of England. If you scored R1BU106, your father's 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 line is more likely to have entered England with the Anglo-Saxons than with the Celts. If your paternal haplogroup came back as R1BL21, the picture is different. R1BL21 is the Celtic Atlantic signal. It dominates Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, and Brittany. R1BL21 is what most people picture when they think of Celtic ancestry. In coastal American populations, U106 and L21 are roughly evenly split. In central Appalachia, the geneticist Maurice Gleason and the team at the Scottish DNA Project documented a measurable skew toward R1BL21, with a specific subclade called R1BL21DF13 appearing at rates significantly above the American baseline. That subclade has its highest European frequency in 2 regions: Western Scotland and the Ulster coast of Northern Ireland. The genetic evidence and the surname evidence agree. The Appalachian male line is disproportionately Lowland Scots and Ulster Scots. The textbook called them Scots-Irish. The DNA calls them Border English and Lowland Scots, with a layover in Ulster. That is a distinction the textbook flattened. Your DNA did not. Run the test. Confirm the match. Move on. If this is the kind of breakdown you came here for, the kind that maps your test results onto actual European regions and actual historical migrations, subscribe to Anglo Origins. We do this every week. The Scots-Irish were not the only major non-English group to arrive in colonial Pennsylvania. The other group is the one that produced what later Americans came to call the Pennsylvania Dutch. The name is a mistranslation. They were not Dutch. They were Deutsch, Germans. The Pennsylvania German population is not a generic German population. The geneticist Dr. Doran Bahar, working with MyHeritage's reference panel in 2019, broke the Pennsylvania German signal into 3 distinct subclusters. Cluster 1, the Rhineland Palatinate, the region around Mannheim, Heidelberg, and Speyer. This is the largest subcluster, accounting for roughly 55% of documented Pennsylvania German arrivals between 1683 and 1775. The Palatinate was the most heavily war-torn region of Central Europe during the 30 Years' War and the Wars of Louis XIV. The population fled to the American colonies in waves. Cluster 2, the Swiss-German cantons. Bern, Zurich, and the Upper Rhine. This is the Anabaptist cluster. The Amish and Mennonite founding populations trace overwhelmingly to this region, and the DNA continuity is the strongest in the colonial-era American genome. An Amish person tested today against a Bernese Swiss person tested today will share more recent common ancestry than 2 random Germans tested in modern Berlin. Cluster 3, the Alsace and Baden region. The Rhine corridor between the Palatinate and Switzerland. This is the smallest of the 3 subclusters, but the most overlooked because much of Alsace later became French, and the descendants stopped identifying as German. If your ancestry DNA test came back with a Germanic Europe component above 15% and a Pennsylvania colonial paper trail, your most likely source region is the Palatinate, specifically the area between Mannheim and Kaiserslautern. That is not a guess. That is the modal answer from the genetic clustering. Ask them which region, not which country. The country is the easy part. There is a third stream feeding the Appalachian gene pool, and it is the one most descendants miss entirely: the English West Country. When geneticists run principal component analysis on the Appalachian samples, a secondary cluster appears that does not match the Scottish border, does not match Ulster, and does not match the Palatinate. It matches the southwestern English counties of Devon, Somerset, Dorset, and Cornwall. This is the signal of the indentured servant migration. Between 1607 and roughly 1700, the colony of Virginia and the colony of Maryland absorbed somewhere between 100,000 and 150,000 indentured English servants. The majority came from London and the southwestern ports of Bristol, Plymouth, and Exeter. When their indentures expired, many of them moved west. They could not afford tidewater land. They went into the Virginia Piedmont, and from there into the upper south and the eastern edge of Appalachia. By the time the Ulster Scots arrived in the 1730s and 1740s, the English West Country signal was already there. The historian David Hackett Fisher, in his 1989 study Albion's Seed, called this the Cavalier and Servant Migration. Fisher's thesis was that the 4 founding British migrations to the American colonies produced 4 distinct regional American cultures. The genetic evidence has now confirmed what Fisher argued historically. The Southern Appalachian gene pool is roughly a 3-way blend: Lowland Scots and Border English, layered through Ulster, English West Country and London, and a smaller German and Swiss German component bleeding south out of Pennsylvania along the Great Wagon Road. That blend is unique. There is no other place on Earth where those 3 streams converged in those proportions, which is why the Appalachian DNA signal is genetically distinguishable from coastal Virginia, from coastal Carolina, from the Deep South, and from the upper Midwest. You can find the same surnames in all of those regions. The frequencies are different. The proportions are different. The genome reads differently. Inside the Appalachian signal, the geneticist Dr. Peter Hrekdakian and the team at the Welsh DNA Project identified a smaller marker that punches above its weight. It is a Welsh component concentrated in eastern Kentucky, southern West Virginia, and the western counties of North Carolina. Welsh DNA is genetically distinct from English DNA and from Scottish DNA. It is the closest living approximation of the pre-Roman population of Great Britain. R1BL21, the haplogroup we mentioned earlier, reaches its highest European frequency in Wales. The Welsh migration to colonial America was small in absolute numbers, perhaps 30 to 50,000 arrivals across the entire colonial period, but it was geographically concentrated. The Welsh tract in Pennsylvania, Welsh settlements in the Yadkin Valley of North Carolina, and a smaller stream that pushed directly into eastern Kentucky in the late 1700s. If your surname is Davis, Jones, Williams, Evans, Edwards, Lewis, Morgan, or Roberts, and your family papers trace through Kentucky, West Virginia, or western North Carolina, the most likely source region is southern Wales, specifically the counties of Glamorgan and Carmarthenshire. That Welsh component is small in the average Appalachian sample, maybe 3 to 7%. But it is durable. It has not washed out across 9 generations of intermarriage with the larger Border English and Ulster Scots population. The Welsh marker stayed. The most common family story in Appalachia is the Cherokee great-grandmother. Roughly 1 in 3 families across eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, and northern Georgia carry some version of this story. The unnamed Native American ancestor, usually female, and a generation or 2 beyond living memory. The geneticists have looked at this carefully, and the answer is precise. In Donnelly's 2018 study, the average Cherokee admixture across the Appalachian sample was 0.3%. That number includes a small fraction of individuals with verifiable Cherokee ancestry from documented Cherokee descent lines, mostly traceable to families in the Qualla boundary and the documented mixed-race communities along the Tennessee and North Carolina line. The other 95% of family stories about a Cherokee great-grandmother are not supported by the DNA. That does not make the stories meaningless. The historian Gregory Smithers, in his 2015 work on the Cherokee diaspora documented how those family stories often replaced something else. A free black ancestor, a Melungeon ancestor, a Romani ancestor, or simply darker featured European ancestry from southern Italy or Iberia, which after the 18th century became socially inconvenient to claim. The Cherokee story was the safer story. The DNA, when you actually run it, mostly traces back to Europe. If your test came back showing 0 Native American component, and your family always told you about a Cherokee great-grandmother, the most likely explanation is that the story was a placeholder. The actual ancestor was something the family chose not to record. That is a hard sentence, but it is the sentence the data supports. If you have taken a consumer DNA test and your results came back labeled as British, Scottish, or Irish, with a colonial American paper trail running through Appalachia, here is what you are actually looking at. The British label is not telling you that your ancestors were from London. It is telling you that the algorithm cannot distinguish between Lowland Scots, Border English, Ulster Scots, and West Country English at the resolution most consumer tests offer. All 4 of those populations are real, distinct European populations, and all 4 of them feed your genome in different proportions. Your DNA does not point to Buckingham Palace. It points to Carlisle, Howick, Coleraine, Plymouth, and Heidelberg. Specific places, specific borders, specific feuds. Borders move. Bloodlines do not. The English crown moved the reavers to Ulster in 1610. Ulster moved them to Philadelphia between 1717 and 1775. The wagon road moved them into Appalachia by 1780, and the Hollows held them there for 250 years, marrying within the same valleys, the same surnames, the same drift. That is why the Appalachian DNA signal looks the way it does, not because the people there are different from other Americans in some mystical sense, because their gene pool was sealed early in a specific place with a specific founding population, and it stayed sealed long enough to keep its shape. When the geneticists ran the comparison and the numbers came back, that is what they were looking at. A 400-year-old border preserved inside a modern American genome. Run the test. Read the regions. Move on. Borders move. Bloodlines do not.